Alton and Bernice Renville just wanted to get home with their groceries, but when two officers surrounded them and started digging through their bags, they didn't expect the entire community, and their marine son, to rise up behind them. It was the kind of Tuesday that didn't make the news. Mid-70s weather, dry, just enough of a breeze to lift the plastic bags from shopping carts if you weren't quick with your hands. Alton Renville moved slowly across the parking lot of Crestline Grocers in Decatur, Georgia, tapping his walker in a rhythm only his joints truly understood. His wife, Bernice, 2 steps behind with a paper receipt folded in her hand, looked at him like she always had, like he was still the man who used to dance barefoot with her in the kitchen before arthritis got mean. They parked in the same spot they always used, 3rd from the left under the half-dead magnolia tree. The tree had seen better days, just like Alton's knees, but he didn't complain. Not about that. He joked often that if he hadn't spent 39 years mopping up floors in public schools, maybe his knees wouldn't sound like popcorn. But there was never bitterness in his tone, just wear. Bernice reached into the trunk, rearranging a few cans of soup so the bread wouldn't get squashed. She was careful like that. Organized, steady, the kind of woman who always kept tissues in her purse and a spare pen in her Bible cover. Their life wasn't grand, but it was peaceful, predictable. Comfort lived in routines. And for nearly 10 years, that grocery run had been theirs. No interruptions, no nonsense, just groceries, each other, and a stop at Dell's fried fish on the way home if their Social Security hit early. "Did you remember the green beans?" Alton asked. She pulled the bag closer and peered inside. "Got 'em? 2 cans, low sodium." He smiled. "That's why I married you. You never forget the green beans." Bernice chuckled. "That and the fact I said yes before you lost your hair." Alton gave a slow, dry laugh that ended in a cough. That too. They were like that. Playful, even now. Over 60 years of marriage had sanded down all the sharp edges. They didn't argue much anymore, didn't have the energy for it. Mostly they just tried to take care of each other as best they could. Quietly. As Alton began to fold his walker and reach for the trunk, a loud chirp of tires drew their attention. A black and white sheriff's vehicle pulled up fast, too fast, and angled behind their car, nearly blocking it in. Alton paused. "You see that?" Bernice didn't answer at first. She squinted toward the 2 uniformed men stepping out of the cruiser. One tall with a red face and slick hair, the other younger, lean and fidgety. Both white, both moving like they were already mad. The older one, Sergeant Cole Vinter, adjusted his belt and looked straight at Alton. "Sir, I'm gonna need you to step away from the vehicle." Alton blinked. "Pardon me?" "You match the description of a suspect. Step away from the vehicle now." Bernice stiffened. "Excuse me, what are you talking about? We just came out of the store." The younger one, Deputy Bryce Halden, cut in. "Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to remain calm." "I am calm," she said, voice tightening. "We didn't do anything wrong. My husband didn't even go in the store with me." "That's not what we're concerned with," Vinter replied, stepping closer. "We have a report of a man matching his description taking merchandise without paying." Alton stared at them. "What description?" "Elderly male, dark pants, ball cap, moving slow," Halden said, glancing down at a notepad like it was some kind of proof. Alton looked down at his own pants, his cap, the same Georgia Bulldogs cap he'd worn every week for the last 12 years. "You're joking," he muttered. Bernice's hands started to tremble. "He's 83 years old. He didn't even step inside. He waited for me outside. I have the receipt right here." She held it up, shaking slightly. Halden ignored it and walked toward the trunk. "Ma'am, I'm gonna need to take a look inside those bags." Alton reached out. "Hold on now. You don't have a warrant. You can't just go through our stuff." Holden narrowed his eyes. Don't get smart with me. For a second the air thickened. It was the way the deputy's hand hovered near his holster, the way Sergeant Vinter planted his boots, shoulders squared. Like something could break open, and none of it would make sense once it did. Bernice stepped between them. Please, just slow down, please. But they didn't. That's when the crowd started to notice. Not everyone walked past this kind of thing anymore. A woman pushing a stroller paused just a few feet away. She glanced over once, then again, slower this time. Her toddler, cheeks sticky from a snack, pointed at the flashing patrol lights on the cruiser. A man in a delivery uniform from the UPS store nearby stopped by the curb and squinted toward the back of the Renville's sedan. It was obvious something was happening, but no one quite knew what yet. Alton straightened up as much as he could, squinting against the sun. This is nonsense. You think I stole something? Look at me. Vinter stepped closer. We didn't say you stole anything. We said your vehicle matches the description from a call that came in 15 minutes ago. Bernice gripped her purse with both hands. We've been parked here for nearly 30 minutes. I was inside the whole time. My husband was sitting on that bench, she pointed, right there by the cart corral. Vinter didn't look. Ma'am, please stop interrupting. We're just trying to do our job. Holden peered into the trunk now, lifting one of the bags with a sharp tug. Alton's voice cracked. Hey, don't handle our food like that. That's ours. We paid for that. Holden didn't respond. He unzipped the smaller insulated bag and pulled out a pack of frozen tilapia, flipped it over, then dropped it back in. The eggs shifted dangerously near the edge. You see a receipt? He asked Vinter. She's holding it. Alton snapped. She's been holding it the whole time. Holden turned to Bernice. Then I suggest you hand it over. Bernice held it out, but not before unfolding it carefully. Her hands weren't steady, but she managed to point to the timestamp. I bought all of this at 1:12 p.m. It's now 1:38. Check your system. Vinter grabbed the receipt and gave it a glance, then handed it back without comment. His lips tightened. Holden looked back at the older man. We still need to ask you a few questions. Do you have ID on you? Alton reached slowly into his breast pocket. You treat all senior citizens like this? Or just the ones who look like me? Holden said nothing. The silence was worse than any answer. By now, 4 more people had stopped. A woman in a blue sundress had begun filming with her phone. Her friend stood behind her, whispering something under her breath. Something like, don't say nothing. Just keep filming. A teenager from the fast food joint next door leaned against the fence, shaking his head. Bernice's voice cracked now. What is this, really? Do we look like criminals to you? Holden turned slightly toward her. It's not about looks, ma'am. Alton scoffed. Isn't it? Vinter stiffened. We're not going to argue about that. Sir, please step to the front of the vehicle. I'm not moving, Alton said. I don't have to. I'm not under arrest. Holden stepped forward again. His voice dropped, quiet but laced with something sharper. You want this to get difficult. That's when Bernice stepped between them again. No, please don't. Please, he's not well. He had a fall just last month. He's got arthritis. He can't be standing in the sun for long. The silence that followed was heavy. You could feel it, the kind of silence where people start thinking about what could go wrong in just a few seconds. One wrong word, one twitch, one loud noise. A woman near the store entrance spoke loudly now. Why y'all messing with them? They've been shopping here for years. Another voice. That's Alton. He used to clean up at the middle school. He's a good man. Vinter glanced around. He didn't like the shift. Attention meant accountability. Phones meant headlines. But instead of backing down, he doubled down. We're following procedure. This isn't a performance. Alton looked up at him. Feels like one. Holden's hand twitched near his side. Bernice's eyes welled up, her mouth trembling. But she didn't cry. Not yet. The crowd grew. Someone whistled. Another woman was already live-streaming on Facebook, murmuring into the mic, "Y'all, look what they doing to this old couple in the Crestline parking lot. This is sick." A man walked up, leaned over to Vinter, and asked if the Renvilles were being detained. "Back up, sir," Vinter snapped. "This doesn't concern you." "Sure it does," the man replied. "They live down the street from my mama." The energy shifted again. The crowd wasn't leaving. But Holden wasn't backing off either. He motioned toward his partner. "They're getting combative. I'm calling it in." That's when they all heard the screech of tires from behind the crowd. Fast, rough, angry, and saw a green pickup barrel into the parking lot. The green pickup rolled in quick, brake pads groaning as it halted just 2 spaces down. The driver's side door flung open before the engine even cut off. Out stepped Staff Sergeant Corwin Belridge, shoulders broad and squared, boots hitting the pavement like warning shots. He wore his camis, tan, dust-flecked, and still creased from a 6-hour drive out of Camp Lejeune. People stepped aside without being asked. "Dad?" Corwin called. Alton turned, his face instantly softening despite the weight of the moment. "Corwin!" Bernice's hands flew to her chest. "Lord, thank you." Corwin walked up fast but controlled, stopping between his father and the officers. "What's going on here?" Neither officer answered immediately. "Sir, I need you to stay back," Vinter said, trying to take control again. "This is a police matter." Corwin didn't blink. "You're talking to my parents. That makes it my matter." Holden took a step forward. "We're responding to a shoplifting call. They match the description, that's all." Corwin glanced at his mother. "You took something from the store?" Bernice shook her head quickly. "No, baby. I have the receipt. It's all paid for. They won't believe me." "She's been showing it to them," Alton added. "They just won't listen." Corwin turned to Vinter. "Then what's the probable cause? Is there a camera? A witness? Or are you going off a phone call and a guess?" Vinter tensed. "This is still under investigation." Corwin held up a hand. "I'm not here to escalate anything, Sergeant. But I'm telling you right now, my father has high blood pressure, and you're one smart remark away from pushing him too far. He didn't steal a damn thing. Neither did my mother. And I don't appreciate the tone you've used with them." "You weren't here," Holden replied sharply. "I don't need to be here to recognize harassment when I see it." Corwin snapped back. "You searched their bags. You questioned them without a single piece of evidence. Do you treat every elderly couple like this?" Vinter shifted his stance, his voice lowering. "We're following protocol." Corwin stepped closer, chest nearly touching Vinter's. "You're embarrassing yourselves. You've got at least 10 people filming you. Go ahead, look around." Phones were up. Some had been recording for several minutes now. One voice from the crowd spoke again. "That's their son. He's military." Another woman added, "They harassed them over canned green beans. What a damn shame." Vinter exhaled hard through his nose. "Look, we didn't come here looking for trouble." "But you brought it anyway," Corwin said. "My dad uses a walker. You think someone like that is sprinting out of a store with stolen meat? You think my mom is out here boosting canned fruit in her Sunday flats?" Bernice touched his arm. "Baby, don't raise your voice." "I'm not," he said, calming. "I'm making sure they don't raise theirs." Alton cleared his throat. "Corwin, they wouldn't even look at the receipt. She was holding it out like a peace flag." Corwin looked at Holden. "She offered it, didn't she?" Holden hesitated. "She did." "Did you take it?" "No." "Why not?" No answer. Corwin folded his arms. "You humiliated them over nothing. In public, with people watching. And now you're realizing you don't have a leg to stand on." Vinter's jaw twitched. "We were doing our job." No, Corwin replied. Firm now. You were doing something else entirely. Another man stepped forward from the crowd. They're good people. They bring pies to the church fish fry every fall. Never cause no trouble. Bernice smiled faintly, still shaken but grateful. Holden looked around again. A woman had gone live on Instagram, talking to her audience. This right here is why folks say they scared. Look at what they're doing to these elders. If their son hadn't shown up, who knows? The officers backed off slightly, but they didn't apologize. They just stood there, rigid, exposed, and surrounded. But then something shifted in the air again. A man in an apron came jogging from the store entrance, waving one hand high. He was out of breath and holding a printed paper. The man in the apron slowed his pace as he neared the growing circle around the Renville's car. His cheeks were red, not from heat, but from frustration. The paper in his hand flapped in the breeze. Store security footage stills. Hot off the printer. "Excuse me," he said, pushing through a few people. "I'm Terence Drayden, assistant manager here. Someone from inside called the sheriff's office, said a suspicious man took items and didn't pay. But I've reviewed the tape." He handed the paper to Sergeant Vinter. "That ain't him. Not even close." Everyone in earshot went quiet. Vinter glanced at the printout, jaw tight. The man in the photo was shorter, bald, wearing a grey hoodie. Nothing like Alton, who had on a navy polo, khakis, and a Georgia Bulldogs cap. "You see?" Bernice's voice rose, not angry, just hurt. "We told you, over and over." Terence added, "I came out here because the clerk who made the call just rewatched the footage and realized they got it wrong. Guy walked out to the side exit about 15 minutes ago. They didn't even look out front where Mr. Renville was sitting." Corwin stepped forward again. "So not only were they wrong, they didn't even verify before coming out here to accuse two innocent people." Holden looked down, trying to process. Vinter shifted uncomfortably. "We were responding based on the initial report, and you had every chance to slow it down once you got here," Corwin said. "But you didn't. You went through their things. You embarrassed them. You made it a scene." A woman near the edge of the crowd let out a long breath. "Whew. This could have gone a whole other way." Terence, still catching his breath, looked at Alton. "Sir, I'm real sorry. I told my team if they weren't sure, they needed to wait. We're handling that inside, believe me." Alton didn't say anything. His eyes were on the two deputies. Bernice placed a hand on his arm. "Let's go home." But Corwin wasn't done. "Hold on. Y'all aren't just going to pretend this didn't happen. You need to say something. To them. Not to me. To them." Vinter's expression stayed stiff, but he finally spoke. "Ma'am, sir, this situation turned out differently than expected. We apologize for the misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Alton finally said, his voice quiet, but it cut like a razor. "Is that what you call it?" Vinter didn't answer. Corwin turned to the crowd, voice even but firm. "This is what happens when people don't ask questions, when they go off of fear, not facts. My parents didn't deserve that. No one does." The woman with the phone pointed it straight at Vinter. "Y'all hear that? You could have caused something permanent out here today. And not even a real apology." Holden stepped back and whispered something to his partner. Then both officers began walking toward their vehicle. "Cowards," someone muttered in the crowd. As they pulled away, Bernice let out a shaky sigh. The tension in her shoulders dropped just a little, but not all the way. Alton still hadn't moved. He stared at the trunk, where their bread now sat flattened under a bag of apples. "I used to mop the floors of your precinct," he said softly, not even loud enough for the officers to hear as they drove off. "Cleaned the hallways with my name tag on and my back bent. And today I'm good for what? A suspect?" Bernice touched his hand. "Don't carry that home with you." "I already did," he said. Terence stepped closer. "I'm real sorry, Mr. Renville. I can comp your groceries. Store policy." "We don't want a discount," Bernice replied gently. "We want our dignity back." Terence lowered his head. "Yes, ma'am." Someone from the crowd shouted toward Corwin. "Hey, man, what's your name?" He hesitated, then answered, "Corwin Belridge." "You're a good son, Corwin." Corwin looked at his mother. Not good enough if this still happened, but the story wasn't over, not when it had already spread beyond the lot, past the crowd, and into the phones of people watching from home. By the time Corwin closed the trunk and helped his father back into the car, 3 local news alerts had already hit Twitter. Someone posted a clip that showed the moment Halden reached for the grocery bags without consent. Another video caught Bernice saying, "We've been parking here for 10 years. That one hit a nerve. People started quoting it like a slogan. Back inside the pickup, Corwin's jaw was tight. He sat behind the wheel, hands gripping it even though the truck was parked and off. He was trying to slow his breathing, trying not to let the heat boil over. Bernice sat beside Alton in the back seat, her hands folded around his. Her eyes darted to her son in the mirror. "You okay?" she asked him softly. He nodded, but it wasn't convincing. "You handled that right?" Alton added, voice scratchy. "You didn't lose yourself. That's hard. I shouldn't have had to handle it." Corwin muttered, "Y'all should have been left alone. You're not kids out causing a scene. You were getting groceries." Bernice reached forward and touched his shoulder. "And you stood up for us. We'll hold on to that, baby." Corwin looked back at them. "What happens when I'm not around next time?" Neither of them answered. He pulled out of the parking lot slowly. They passed by the same bench Alton had been sitting on earlier, still warm from the sun, still empty, still harmless, and yet it had been the place where everything started going sideways. As they pulled onto Glenwood Avenue, Bernice pointed to a corner gas station. "Stop there. I need to get some ginger ale." Corwin raised an eyebrow. "You sure you want to stop anywhere right now?" "I'm fine," she said. "I just need something cold." He eased the truck in front of the station. "You want me to go in?" "No," she said. "I want to do something normal." So she got out. Corwin watched her walk through the automatic doors. Her steps were slower than usual. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was the weight of it all. Back in the car, Alton finally spoke again. "You remember that time in Alabama, when you were little?" Corwin glanced at him in the mirror. "Which time?" "When the gas station lady told us the bathroom was out of order. But then we saw a white man come out 2 minutes later, zipping up." Corwin nodded slowly. "Yeah, I remember. You were 5. You asked me why we had to leave without using it. I couldn't even give you an answer. I still can't." Corwin didn't say anything right away. Alton continued, "I spent my whole life trying to shield you from that nonsense. Thought maybe it'd skip your generation. Guess not." Corwin looked out the window. "Well, now I'm shielding you. That's how this works, right?" They sat in silence until Bernice returned with 3 bottles of soda in a small plastic bag. She handed one to each of them and kept the 3rd in her lap. "Here," she said, passing Corwin a bottle. "This world might get colder, but this'll help for now." He chuckled once. "You always know what to say." "No, I don't," she replied. "I just keep talking until something sounds right." Back on the road, Corwin noticed his phone vibrating. A friend from base had texted, "Bro, is this your folks? You're trending." He opened the video. Someone had edited clips together. Bernice showing the receipt, Alton standing beside the trunk, Corwin confronting the officers. The background music was soft piano. The caption read, "A son defends his parents. This is what love looks like." He showed his parents. Bernice shook her head. "I didn't ask for attention." "You didn't ask for disrespect either," Corwin replied. The road turned quiet again as they approached home, just a few blocks from the grocery store, same route they always took. But this time, it felt different. But as the sun started dipping behind the trees, the quiet didn't last, because someone else had seen the video too, and now they were knocking on the Renville's front door. Corwin pulled into the driveway just as the knock came again, 2 quick thumps, confident and heavy. He killed the engine and stepped out of the truck, motioning for his parents to stay inside. The man on the porch was in plain clothes, button-down shirt, tucked, black slacks, clipboard in hand. Mid-40s, salt and pepper stubble, an official-looking ID badge clipped to his belt. He turned when he heard the door open. "Sergeant Belridge?" the man asked. Corwin gave him a once-over. "Who's asking?" "Detective Elias Krim. Internal Affairs, DeKalb County Sheriff's Department. I need to ask you a few questions about what happened this afternoon." Corwin stepped onto the porch. "You're fast." Krim nodded. "This one picked up steam faster than most. I've already had 5 calls about it, 3 from community members, 2 from your commanding officers." "My CO?" Corwin asked, raising a brow. "Apparently someone emailed the footage to your base commander." Corwin sighed. "Of course they did." Krim glanced toward the truck. "Are your parents okay to talk?" "No, not tonight. They've had enough for one day." Krim respected that. "Understood. But I'd still like to hear your version. And if they're up for it, maybe we schedule something later this week?" Corwin crossed his arms. "Let me ask you something before I start. What happens to guys like Vinter and Holden when you find out they've been acting like this for years, but nobody filmed it before today?" Krim didn't blink. "Depends. Sometimes they get desk duty. Sometimes they walk away clean. Sometimes they resign before anything sticks. Is that what you're hoping for here? A quiet little resignation? So this blows over?" Krim held his ground. "I'm not here to protect them. I'm here to investigate what they did. And if they crossed the line, which it looks like they did, I'll make sure it doesn't get swept under a rug." Corwin watched him for a beat. "Good, because I've got the whole encounter on my phone too. Not just the crowd footage. Mine has audio from when Vinter told my father to step away from the vehicle like he was a suspect." Krim pulled a small notepad from his back pocket. "Would you be willing to share that file with me? Only if you're serious about doing something with it. I wouldn't be on your porch at 7:30 p.m. if I wasn't." Corwin nodded slowly, then took out his phone and began queuing up the video. As it loaded, the front door creaked open behind them. Bernice stepped out, wrapped in her light blue shawl. She looked tired, but composed. "You want to talk to me too?" she asked softly. Krim turned. "Only if you're comfortable." She came forward. "Comfortable ain't the word, but I'm not afraid of my truth," Alton's voice followed from inside. "Don't let him take too long, Byrne. Jeopardy's on in 15. She smiled faintly. "I'll be in quick." Krim gave her space. "Ma'am, I just need to verify a few things. Did the officers search your groceries without permission?" "They did." "Did they accept the receipt when you offered it?" "I offered it 3 times. First time I held it out, second time I waved it, third time I read the timestamp out loud. They ignored me." Krim wrote it all down. "And your husband? He never went inside the store?" Bernice shook her head. "He sat on that bench by the carts, like he always does. He doesn't move too well anymore. I handle the shopping." Krim closed his pad. "Thank you. I won't keep you." Before she turned to go back inside, Bernice said one more thing. "It's not just about us. This kind of thing breaks people a little at a time. Doesn't matter if you're 18 or 83. It gets inside you." Krim looked her in the eyes. "I understand." She gave him a polite nod, then walked back into the house. Corwin handed over a USB drive he had pulled from a drawer. "That has my footage on it. Do the right thing with it." Krim accepted it and left quietly, not saying much more. The sun was almost gone now, just streaks of orange cutting across the rooftops. Corwin sat on the porch for a while, staring out at the quiet street. A few kids were riding bikes. A neighbor across the way was watering his front lawn like nothing had happened. And maybe that was the hardest part. How normal the world still looked. But beneath the quiet, people were talking. At dinner tables, in group texts, on church forums. About the Renvilles, the officers, and the question they couldn't shake. How many times does this happen when nobody's watching? By Wednesday morning, the video had made its way to 3 different local news stations and a national civil rights account with over 1 million followers. It had already been clipped, subtitled, stitched into reactions, and reposted across platforms. On one upload, someone commented, "He's in a Marine uniform, and they still didn't back off. What would have happened if he showed up in regular clothes?" Another reply underneath simply read, "The uniform didn't protect his parents. His presence did." Inside the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office, Sergeant Cole Vinter stood in a cramped conference room, flanked by his union rep and a captain who wasn't making eye contact. Deputy Halden sat across the table, pale and unusually quiet. A laptop played the viral clip on loop. No sound, just the footage, frame by frame, gesture by gesture. Vinter tried to mask his nerves, but the corner of his mouth kept twitching. He didn't comply right away, he said finally, trying to justify what happened. "He questioned our authority. That creates risk." Captain Irwin leaned forward. "You approached an elderly man using a walker and treated him like he was about to flee on foot." Vinter stayed defensive. "We responded to a theft call. Male suspect, elderly, slow-moving. It matched." "You didn't verify the footage," Irwin snapped. "You didn't ask for confirmation before approaching. You didn't de-escalate. And now we're in a firestorm." The union rep interrupted. "Cole has 22 years on the force. His record is clean. Let's not rush to judgment here." Irwin sighed, rubbing his temples. "We're beyond judgment. This is damage control now. The mayor's office is calling every 30 minutes. I've got 3 city council members demanding a town hall, and the store issued a public apology before we even released a statement." Halden finally spoke. "I didn't mean to come across aggressive. I just thought we had it right." "You didn't think," Irwin barked. "You reacted. You let your assumptions fill in the blanks." Meanwhile, across town, at the Renville household, Bernice sat in the kitchen, fielding a voicemail from the local AM radio station. They wanted her and Alton to call in for a segment called Voices of the Community. Alton was sitting at the table, reading the newspaper, but not really reading it. His glasses sat low on his nose, and his eyes weren't moving line to line. "You okay?" Bernice asked gently. He grunted. "I'm tired. Physically or everything?" "Both." She reached across the table and touched his hand. "You don't have to talk on the radio if you don't want to." "I don't want to be a symbol," he said. "I just wanted to buy some damn green beans." She squeezed his fingers. "I know." Just then the doorbell rang. Corwin answered it. A woman stood there, mid-30s, sharp blazer, media badge around her neck. Behind her, a cameraman adjusted his lens. "Hi. Sorry to come without notice. My name's Elena Pierce, WSB-TV. We're doing a segment tonight about the incident. If your parents are willing to speak, or if you are, we'd like to give them the chance." Corwin stepped out and closed the door behind him. "They're not ready. Not today." "Understood," Elena said. "We'll be covering it either way. The sheriff's office is holding a press conference at 5 p.m. Rumor is one of the officers is being pulled from duty." Corwin raised an eyebrow. "Both of them should be." "That's not what I heard. Vinter might keep his badge." Corwin shook his head. "Then you'll probably hear from me after the press conference." Elena gave him her card. "We'll be watching." He walked back inside, card in hand. His parents were still at the table, silent. His mother looking at the window, his father looking at nothing. "They're doing a press conference," he told them. "Later today." Bernice asked, "Will they tell the truth?" Corwin looked down at the card, then up at them. Probably not. But they'll say what makes them look clean. But across town, not everyone was waiting for a podium speech, because one retired teacher had decided to organize something bigger. The first flyer went up on the front window of Brookshire Baptist Church just after noon. By 1:00 p.m., there were copies pinned to the community board outside the library, taped to streetlight poles, and passed hand to hand in the parking lot of Crestline Grocers, the same one where everything had gone wrong. The words were simple and bold. Community Gathering for Justice, Thursday, 6 p.m. Crestline Lot. Stand with the Renvilles. The woman behind it all was Joanne Elridge, a retired teacher who'd known Alton for over 40 years. They'd worked in the same school district. She used to say he kept her classroom cleaner than her own house. The news had shaken her, but not surprised her. Joanne had seen the slow drip of indignities, the ones not caught on camera. This time there was proof. She made calls, she brought folding chairs. She asked the pastor to say a few words. And when her niece offered to bring a sound system, she said yes, without even asking for permission. Meanwhile, across town, the sheriff's department podium had been set up in front of the precinct building. Reporters gathered like bees, wires snaking across the concrete. Behind the mic stood Sheriff Marlon Stegel, a man known for keeping things under wraps, not stirring the pot. He cleared his throat and began. "We've reviewed the footage and taken statements. While responding deputies believed they were following protocol, it's clear there were serious lapses in judgment. Deputy Bryce Halden has been placed on administrative leave pending internal review. Sergeant Cole Vinter will undergo mandatory retraining and community service assignments." A reporter shouted, "Will there be disciplinary action for Vinter?" "We don't comment on personnel matters at this stage." "Have the Renvilles received a direct apology?" "They've been contacted by our office," Stegel said. Corwin watched the press conference on his phone, sitting on the back steps while his mother pruned her azaleas. Bernice shook her head. "That's it? No apology, no accountability," he said. "Just retraining and a couple of weekends picking up trash." She didn't respond. She just trimmed another branch. Corwin's phone buzzed again. Joanne had texted him the flyer. "Come if you can. Bring them. Bring whoever." He walked inside. "They're holding a gathering tomorrow night. At the store." Alton looked up from the couch. "For what?" "To show support. For you. For Mom. For what happened." Alton stared for a moment. "And then what?" Corwin hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But it's something." Bernice came in behind him, wiping her hands on a towel. "We'll go." Alton gave her a long look. "You sure?" "I am." Alton nodded once, then slowly stood. "Then I'll wear my Sunday hat." The next evening, just before 6:00 p.m., the Crestline parking lot was full, not with shoppers this time, but with neighbors, old classmates, young parents, high school kids, church elders, and even a few local business owners. They brought lawn chairs, handwritten signs, and stories. One woman stood with her arms crossed, saying, "I remember when Officer Vinter pulled over my son for having tinted windows, made him sit on the curb for 30 minutes. Another man, older, nodded. "They've been sliding by for years. This just finally got filmed." Joanne stepped up to the mic. "Thank you for coming," she said. "We're not here to start trouble. We're here to remind each other what dignity looks like, and what it sounds like when we don't stay quiet." People clapped. And then, to everyone's surprise, Corwin stepped forward. He didn't prepare a speech. He didn't need one. "My father worked for 40 years cleaning schools in this county. My mother raised us while holding down 2 jobs. They did everything by the book, paid taxes, served their neighbors. They've earned the right to be left alone at the grocery store." More applause. "They were profiled, publicly searched, and humiliated. For nothing. But this isn't just about them. It's about who gets questioned and who gets believed. And that has to change. At that moment, something shifted. Not anger, not yelling, just truth. Finally laid out in plain sight, with no badge to hide behind. But while the crowd stood in unity, the officers in question were still watching from the shadows. Because word travels fast in small towns, and reputations take longer to repair than they do to wreck. The next morning, the news vans were gone. The crowd had left no trash behind, just impressions in the grass where folding chairs had been, and a single cardboard sign taped to a light pole that read, "Dignity doesn't expire." The Renvilles' house was quiet, peaceful even, but it wasn't the same kind of peace they were used to. This peace came with weight, the kind that settles into your chest, just beneath the ribs. Corwin sat at the kitchen table, still in a plain t-shirt and jeans, scrolling through messages on his phone. Some were from friends back on base. Others were from strangers. One read, "You said what my dad was never allowed to say." Another, "Tell your mom she reminded me of my grandma. Tell her she gave me courage." Bernice walked in and placed a bowl of fruit on the table. "You're up early. Didn't sleep much." She nodded. "Me neither." Across the house, Alton was humming faintly while watering the potted plant on the porch. A few neighbors had dropped off flowers on the steps. Others just left notes. "We see you. We're with you." Corwin looked up at his mother. "You think any of this actually changes something?" She sat down slowly. "Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But someone out there is watching and learning, and that's where change starts." He leaned back in his chair. "Winter's still on payroll, and now half the town knows his name," she replied. "He'll think twice next time." Corwin rubbed his forehead. "Shouldn't take public shame to force decency." "No, it shouldn't," she agreed. "But sometimes that's what it takes to start the clock." That afternoon, Corwin drove to the grocery store alone. He parked in the same spot, third from the left under the crooked magnolia, and walked inside. A young cashier noticed him immediately. "You're Mr. Belridge's son, right?" He nodded. She reached under the counter and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Store manager left this for your family." He opened it outside. A handwritten letter, not corporate slick, not typed, just ink on paper, signed at the bottom by Terence Drayden. "Mr. and Mrs. Renville, I can't erase what happened. I can't pretend we handled it right. What I can do is keep speaking your names here where they matter. I've retrained my whole staff on how to respond. No assumptions, no shortcuts. This place should feel safe, and it didn't. I'm sorry for that. I hope you'll still shop here, and if not, I'll understand. Respectfully, T. Drayden." Corwin folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it into his jacket. He didn't buy anything. He just walked back to the truck and sat with the engine off, eyes on the bench by the carts. When he got home, Bernice was reading in her chair. Alton was watching a game show. "I went to the store," Corwin said. Bernice looked up. "How was it?" He pulled out the envelope and handed it to her. They wrote something. From the manager. She read it slowly, lips moving with each word. When she finished, she exhaled quietly. "I didn't expect that," she said. "It's something," Corwin replied. Alton turned the TV down. "We gonna go back?" Bernice glanced at her husband. "We might," he shrugged. "I like their coffee aisle." She smiled. "We'll see." The phone rang. Bernice answered it and put it on speaker. It was Joanne. "Hey, Bern. Just checking in. You resting?" "We are." "Good. Just so you know, the PTA board voted to send a letter of support, and a few of the high school students started a little campaign online. Respect the Renvilles. It's catchy." Bernice chuckled. "That's kind of them. They're still asking if you'll speak at the youth center next week. But no pressure. I'll think about it," Bernice said. "Right now, we're just breathing. You deserve that. Talk soon." As the call ended, Alton reached for the remote, but paused. "You know what I keep thinking about?" "What's that?" Bernice asked. How close they were to taking it further. One wrong twitch, one raised voice, one misunderstanding, and Corwin could have had a flag instead of a father. The room fell quiet. Corwin spoke up. "That's why we don't stay quiet anymore." But even in silence, the town had started remembering, not the event, but the people, and that memory would outlive any clip, headline, or apology. Sunday morning, the Renvilles walked into St. Amos Chapel holding hands. Alton wore his brown felt Sunday hat, the one with the faint crease down the middle. Bernice wore her pale lavender dress, pressed the night before, and a quiet kind of grace across her face. They didn't slip into the back row like usual. Instead, they were ushered up to the third pew by Pastor Denman himself, who placed a gentle hand on Alton's shoulder and whispered, "Glad you're here." Word had spread, not because they told it, but because the truth carried itself. The congregation stood to sing "Leaning on the Everlasting Arms," and during the chorus, a few people near the front turned to look at Alton and Bernice, not out of curiosity, but with respect. Silent, shared respect. Corwin sat one pew behind them. Hands folded, head down, but listening to every word. He hadn't worn his uniform. Today, he was just a son. After the final prayer, Pastor Denman asked everyone to remain seated. He stepped to the pulpit, cleared his throat, and said, "Before you leave, I want to say something that should have been said long ago, many times over, to people like Alton and Bernice, and to others who carry the same quiet dignity day after day." He turned toward the Renvilles. "You don't ask for applause, you don't demand credit, but when you're tested, the world sees who you really are. And we saw it last week. We saw what strength looks like when it's been earned over a lifetime." The room filled with warm applause. Not explosive, but steady, genuine. Alton lowered his head. Bernice squeezed his hand. Later that day, back on their porch, the two of them sat quietly under the fading sun. No TV, no phones, just the sounds of birds and the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. "I don't know how we got through that," Bernice said. Alton looked at her. "You do," she smiled. "Together?" He nodded. "Always." Corwin came outside carrying 3 glasses of sweet tea. He handed them each a glass, then pulled up a chair. He sipped, then said, "You thinking about going back to Crestline this week?" Bernice glanced at Alton. "We might," she said. "But not because we're over it." "Then why?" Alton answered. "Because I refuse to let anybody shrink my world. Not after all this time." Corwin sat back, letting that sink in. "I think people learned something last week." Bernice stirred her tea. "I hope so. They saw what standing up looks like," he said. "Not just the loud kind. The quiet kind, too." She turned toward him. "That's the one that lasts." They sat like that for a long while. Nothing urgent, just presence. Later that evening, a letter came in the mail. No return address, just a Georgia postmark. Inside was a short note, written in careful cursive. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Renville, I saw the video. I've never written anything like this before. I'm white, and I'm ashamed it took something so obvious to wake me up. I hope it's not too late to say thank you for your grace, your calm, and your example. I see you now, and I won't forget. K.L." Bernice folded it slowly. "Strangers writing letters now." Alton shrugged. "Not so strange. People crave reminders of what right looks like." Corwin looked at them both. "So what do we do now?" Alton leaned back in his chair. "We rest. We live. We love. And if someone crosses the line again, we remind them who they're dealing with." Bernice chuckled. With sweet tea in hand, they raised their glasses together in the quiet. Because dignity doesn't fade with age, And justice isn't something you ask for once. It's something you protect, for those who came before you, and for those who'll come after. If this story moved you, don't scroll away. Share it. Talk about it. Let someone else see what respect looks like when it's lived, not just preached. And if you haven't already, subscribe. These are the stories that need to be remembered.